they're not crackpots in their backyard
Yeah,
at
they're
night.
not smoking meth and hanging out just like seeing something weird. Like, these are a bunch of trained professionals who are on duty doing their job.
Whose entire job is to be observant and make accurate reports about what they're seeing.
Exactly. Welcome, everybody, to Unraveling the Unexplained. My name is Kat. I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. This is my brother John, longtime fan of the spooky and the paranormal.
Hello, folks.
He has picked out a video for me to react to. I don't know what it is, but we are about to find out together. I am familiar with these ones.
They're all over the news for a while.
Well, and this is like some fairly compelling evidence, right? Like,
Once you look at the whole thing all together and all the stuff around it, yeah, there's a lot of interesting elements to it.
Okay, so we'll play the video, but yeah, I have seen this footage before, and I feel like it's a really solid case of catching this stuff in action.
In early 2007, this silent black and white video was uploaded by a user on a conspiracy and UFO-centric forum called Above Top Secret. The user claimed that the video depicted a disc-shaped UFO outmaneuvering a fighter jet somewhere off the coast of Mexico in the mid-2000s. They had supposedly gained access to the video while serving on board a US aircraft carrier and claimed to have smuggled the potentially classified material off the ship. While some members of the forum chose to believe their story, others were not so easily convinced. For instance, the video was hosted on a website belonging to a group of German film students, which led some to denounce the clip as an attempted hoax. Even those who believed it could be genuine still complained that it was a totally uninspiring video of a fuzzy dot.
It's fair.
Over a decade later, this long-forgotten video suddenly resurfaced as part of an article by the New York Times. The video was now linked to a secret government-funded program and was even corroborated by a credible eyewitness. What had initially been dismissed as a hoax turned out to be real. The video was said to depict a genuine encounter between US Navy fighter jets and some sort of unidentified craft. A second black and white video of a similar yet completely separate incident was also featured at the beginning of the article, except this one had sound.
Dude, this is drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. The whole thing, dude.
These two videos, along with a third released a few months later, spread across the internet like wildfire. Comment sections and discussion threads were dominated by unrestrained speculation about aliens and paranormal phenomena. The skeptics, meanwhile, took it upon themselves to analyze every pixel in every frame in the hopes of uncovering some neglected clue that could identify these fuzzy blobs. Any lingering doubts about the video's authenticity vanished with the release of an official statement by the Department of Defense confirming that the videos depicted real events involving unidentified aerial phenomena. So,
Don't you love it when, like, conspiracy theories or whatever, like, initially people sound crazy and they get, like, on the internet and, oh, it's a fake, it's a German film student or whatever the case may be, and it's like, nah, bro, like, that was actually video that somebody had and released and
it
put it out there.
It happens very rarely. This is one of the few times where I am aware of that it was confirmed by the government that these videos were the real thing in terms of, like, they encountered something and filmed it, and this is a video, of at least a piece of a video of what was filmed.
Yeah.
what exactly are we looking at? The first video was recorded off the northwestern coast of Mexico in late 2004. The story behind it has been recounted by more than a dozen naval officers, and it goes like this. In early November of 2004, a naval strike group led by the aircraft carrier the USS Nimitz was conducting pre-deployment exercises about 100 kilometers southwest of San Diego. Starting around the 10th of November, radar technicians aboard a guided missile cruiser the USS Princeton were puzzled by a series of unidentified radar tracks near San Clemente Island. The tracks did not resemble any known aircraft and would sporadically appear in groups of 5 to 10 at a time. Suspecting a malfunction of some sort, the recently upgraded Spy 1 radar system was taken offline and recalibrated. Once the system was brought back online, however, the tracks had only become sharper. Among those on board were Senior Chief Operations Specialist Kevin Day, who was an expert on the Spy 1 radar system and had 18 years worth of experience at the time of the incident. Day observed firsthand how these unknown targets alternated between slightly strange and physics-defying maneuvers. Sometimes a cluster of tracks would appear out of nowhere and slowly drift south. They were flying too high to be birds, too slow to be conventional aircraft, and did not follow any commercial airways. Other times, they would seemingly descend from space and drop all the way down to sea level in mere seconds. These phenomena continued for several days, and every time they reappeared, the crew would run up to the bridge and use a pair of heavily magnified binoculars to see these tiny specks moving erratically in the distance. On the morning of November the 14th, the crew on board the USS Nimitz were gearing up for a scheduled air defense exercise. They had not yet been informed of the unusual returns picked up by the Princeton. It was a cloudless day, and the sea was calm as pilots took to the skies. One of them was Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Kurth, who was flying a single-seat FA-18 fighter jet when he was contacted by the Princeton. He was instructed to investigate an unknown target approaching from the south. The Princeton also wanted to know if he carried any weapons, to which the answer was no. Kurth made his way to the specified coordinates, but did not pick up anything on sensors. As he looked down towards the ocean, however, his attention was immediately drawn towards a turbulent patch of water. Kurth claims to have seen a roundish disturbance on the ocean, which appeared as though something was submerged just below the surface. It reminded him of a submarine or ship slowly sinking into the ocean. The Nimitz strike group did include a nuclear-powered submarine named the USS Louisville. The Louisville was in the vicinity when Kurth made his observations, so the churning may indeed have been caused by a submerging submarine. If not, then whatever was in the water managed to evade detection by the Louisville's extremely sensitive sonar. Kurth was soon joined by a squadron of 2 tandem-seated F-18s, the lead aircraft of which was piloted by Commander David Fravor. Much like Kurth, Fravor claims to have seen a disturbance on the ocean, which he described as having a vaguely cross-like shape. He thought it resembled a downed airliner and described its size as much larger than a submarine. While Kurth eventually circled back for the Nimitz, Fravor and his wingman decided to get a closer look. As they began their descent, they noticed a white, capsule-shaped craft moving erratically above the disturbance. At first, they thought it could be a helicopter, but there were no rotor blades. In fact, it was perfectly smooth. No markings, no exhaust, no protrusions of any kind. The UFO appeared to maintain a consistent altitude, but made rapid lateral movements with no visible means of propulsion. According to Fravor, it was a bit smaller than an F-18 and resembled a giant mint of Tic Tac. As Fravor continued to descend, his wingman decided to maintain altitude and kept watching from above. Flying in a spiraling downward motion, Fravor was getting closer and closer until suddenly the UFO realigned its axis and began to climb at an incredible rate of speed. Both of them were now flying in a circle. The UFO was coming up while the F-18 was going down. In an effort to close the distance between them, Fravor made a final aggressive turn before the UFO rapidly accelerated up to a hypersonic speed and disappeared in a matter of seconds. As they looked down towards the ocean, it was now perfectly calm.
I do like observing, like when stuff like this is caught and you're dealing with, let's be completely fair, these are trained pilots, they're trained operators, these are military professionals, they're not
crackpots in their backyard
at night. Yeah, they're
not
smoking meth and hanging out just like seeing something weird. Like these are a bunch of trained professionals who are on duty doing their job.
Whose entire job is to be observant and make accurate reports about what they're seeing.
Exactly. So you have a lot of credible witnesses to what's happening here.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons these particular sets of encounters are among the most interesting that have happened and come out in recent years.
I also like that you're witnessing, an intelligence behavior. Right? Whatever it was doing previously, scanning its own thing or whatever, as soon as it noticed that there was something else there, it turned and started coming up to see what is this other flying thing, and you know, as soon as the pilot made an aggressive turn, it sped off. Like,
the actions are interesting, like starting with the disturbance in the water. Now, again, assuming we don't really know what these things are, extraterrestrial, interdimensional, as you've often brought up, you know, potential entities from a different reality or layer of reality altogether. So it could be doing something with the water or in that area that's just experimental scanning, trying to understand physical properties of water.
I would put forward the argument that anything that doesn't adhere to the laws of physics in our reality doesn't come from that set of physics.
Yeah.
Right? We know that what we know to be true here on Earth, we can apply it to everything that's out there, everything in the observable universe. And even what we can't see, when we apply those, we can use math and indirect evidence to show what things are doing. Like, all things adhere to those same principles and laws of physics,
as we gradually discover them. Yes.
Right. So,
but something that comes from a completely different span or layer of reality where none of those laws really apply might look like something we can't really fully grasp. A weird, smooth white tic-tac that's doing something to the water. We don't know.
Right, exactly. It is coming through and manifesting from a different layer of reality. And it's not... the laws of physics aren't applying to it in the same way that it would here.
And even the means of thinking, because someone might make the argument, if this is a highly advanced extraterrestrial craft from some physical alien species in our galaxy, then why would they be screwing around with water? Why would they not react? Why would they not allow themselves to be seen by the pilots in the first place? Why would they react in such a strange way of just slowly flying up towards the pilot? Why wouldn't they just immediately cloak or fly away? But I think that's trying to apply the thought processes and logic that we would do if we were an advanced species, if we had advanced spacecraft and we were exploring another planet. But what we're dealing with here is something that doesn't really adhere to any of that logic.
Yeah, it's a consciousness structure that it doesn't seem to be familiar with anything having to do with physical reality systems at all.
It was just reacting to the fact that, there's another physical material thing in my area flying towards me. Let's try to mimic what it's doing. It made an aggressive turn towards me. Better skedaddle.
Right, exactly. There's a tendency to want to put a connotation, because these types of craft or consciousness, whatever they are doing things that we don't know how to do, that they're
more advanced.
Yes, that they're more advanced or know something that we don't about physics, or, but I think from my observation, based on the behavior here, it's far more like, and based on a lot of the sort of accounts you get, that it's far more likely that physical reality, the concept of being tangible or solid and operating in this kind of space, is an alien concept to them.
Like, they're still trying to figure out what the heck is going on here.
Exactly.
This is almost like an experimental diver who knows nothing about the ocean, dipping into the ocean for the first time in their awkward diving suit, and they see a shadow moving towards them. They're like, oh shit.
That seems, it does. The behavior feels that way. So let's keep watching.
Going, yeah.
Okay, but what about the video? Well, so Fravor and his wingman made it back to the Nimitz. They landed and ran into a different flight crew preparing to head back out. They told them what they had seen and to be on the lookout for anything out of the ordinary. Soon thereafter, another tandem-seated F-18 took to the skies. This time, it was outfitted with an advanced targeting forward-looking infrared camera system. This ATFLIR pod is controlled by the weapons systems operator seated behind the pilot, and the backseater of this flight was Lieutenant Chad Underwood. A few minutes after departing the Nimitz, Underwood detected something on his radar. The unknown target was directly ahead, a few tens of kilometers away. The target's behavior was erratic and unpredictable. Its altitude and airspeed were in constant flux. According to Underwood, it simply did not abide by the known laws of physics. At some point, Underwood managed to get a lock on the target with the ATFLIR camera, and this is when the much-publicized video was recorded. At the beginning of the video, we see a UFO being tracked in infrared. Underwood then switches to visible light, revealing an out-of-focus rounded mass in the distance. It then switches back to infrared and alternates between two different zoom levels on multiple occasions. Not much happens until the very end of the video, when the UFO suddenly disappears off to the left-hand side of the screen. As the target was too far away to be seen with the naked eye, neither Underwood nor his pilot ever made visual contact. The Princeton continued to detect anomalous radar tracks for at least 2 more days, and according to Senior Chief Day, they eventually disappeared near the Mexican island of Guadalupe. In complete isolation, utterly divorced from any and all surrounding context, this video is extraordinarily unremarkable. It's a fuzzy blob against a featureless background. It's only when you place it in the middle of these truly remarkable stories that the video itself becomes remarkable. When skeptics and debunkers claim that this is a distant airplane, I understand why many are so opposed to that explanation, because the witness accounts say otherwise. A distant airplane can't just zip around the sky as if gravity was non-existent. It doesn't make any sense. Unfortunately, we don't see any of those physics-defying maneuvers in the video. In fact, this fuzzy blob does not do much of anything until the very end, when it suddenly disappears off to the left-hand side of the screen. Now, some claim this is due to a sudden acceleration by the UFO, but it could also be something as simple as the camera losing its target lock. It's difficult to tell. Underwood himself is uncertain about what happens at the end, as he never made visual contact. The witness accounts, meanwhile, are so extraordinary they are difficult to believe. If any regular person claimed to have seen a tic-tac-shaped UFO moving erratically in the sky, a few would listen. But when that same story is told by some of the most qualified observers on the planet, it makes you wonder. And it wasn't just 1 or 2. These UFOs were either seen or tracked by dozens of experienced aviators and sailors for nearly a week. They were seen from multiple vantage points and tracked by one of the most sophisticated radar systems in the world. To think that all of them are lying or all of them were deceived by some prosaic phenomena seems absurd. At the same time, there is no way to verify what they're saying. We have no choice but to take them at their word. We don't have the radar data, the radio communication logs, nor any corroborating evidence. Well, except for this pixel-deficient footage, I guess. You see, on the evening of November the 14th, all the footage and data from these events were supposedly erased. Witnesses claim that 2 men arrived via helicopter who then collected the relevant data before having all the tapes and hard drives wiped clean. Witnesses from both the Nimitz and Princeton recall such a visit and insist that nothing like it had ever happened before. This has understandably led to speculations of some sort of cover-up, that these sightings were that of top-secret military drones or aircraft. While the US military is undoubtedly experimenting with all kinds of cutting-edge technology, it is difficult to believe they possess gravity-defying, hypersonic flying tic-tacs. If so, they would possess technology so far beyond anything known to the public, it would be akin to math.
And more to the point, even if, let's say, the military was testing their hypersonic defying tic-tacs off the coast of Mexico,
why would they do it near one of their own carrier groups?
Exactly. Like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then try to cover it up with weird helicopter men in black or whatever.
Yeah, like if you're gonna do any kind of experimentation with your own craft, you would do it in a place where there would be no witnesses.
Right. We kind of already know that our military tends to test things out in the middle of the desert at certain facilities where they know nobody's around. Like, we already know they do that.
Yeah.
So,
and to me, the more compelling argument against the hidden US military tech angle is that this would be such a ridiculous leap in technology that there almost wouldn't be a reason to continue keeping it secret. You would be using it to put people on other planets at this point. You know, that kind of technology is something that they would jump on making use of.
I don't know. I'm a little less eager to think of the altruistic things they might be putting it towards. I tend to. Well, I have a little bit more dim view of our military.
Even if that were true and they would use it to annihilate our enemies, why wouldn't they be doing that already?
I think because
we wouldn't I don't think we'd be having standoffs with other major superpowers if we had physics-defying hypersonic tic tacs, or like, because you could apply that to so many other things. Essentially, render the nuclear capabilities of every other nation on the planet useless.
I'm not saying I believe they do have this technology. I really don't. This to me is very plainly consciousness from another dimension, in my personal opinion. But I'm also not so quick to believe that the military, if they had superior technology, would be releasing it or using it for anything other than contingencies they needed to. I think we learned the hard way the last time we used a technology that we had, that the whole rest of the world figured out how to do it pretty fast after they saw what was happening.
Yeah.
And it kind of created a bigger problem than it, I would assume they learned the hard way the first time with nuclear technology, that don't use something unless you have to, because the whole rest of the world is going to figure it out pretty fast too. Humans are pretty clever. So I'm a little more skeptical about what our military would do with a technology like this if they had it, but I don't think that's the case. I think the reason that they hide it and cover it up is because it scares them to have to admit that there may be a threat out there that they don't know how to deal with.
Oh, 100%. I find that way more likely.
I think that's the far more likely
that they have no idea what this shit is, and they would undermine their sense of control and power to admit that they don't really have a means of dealing with this yet.
Exactly. That's my feeling on it, personally.
Tragic, and this was back in 2004. I really don't know what to make of this story. After reading, watching, and listening to so many interviews with the people who were there, I'm left with a distinct impression that they're telling the truth. The video, on the other hand, does little to support their claims. Sure, this fuzzy blob may be unidentified, but it's not unexplainable.
Briefly, I would say, if it's unexplainable to the experts and technicians and the people that were there, probably unexplainable.
It's certainly unexplainable to random YouTuber who in his basement decides to concoct an experiment that shows, the exhaust of an airplane could make this fuzzy blob. It's like, that's cute, but that's ignoring all of the expert military testimony around it.
I would say if they were thoroughly perplexed by it, it's pretty unexplainable.
The second and third videos were recorded off the southeastern coast of the United States in early 2015. While those who recorded the footage have yet to come forward, some of their crewmates and fellow pilots have, and according to them, the story goes like this. In the summer of 2014, a naval strike group led by the aircraft carrier the USS Theodore Roosevelt was conducting pre-deployment exercises somewhere off the coast of Virginia. Much like with the Nimitz encounters, the first sign of trouble came in the form of anomalous radar tracks. Following a fleet-wide upgrade of aircraft radar systems, pilots had begun to pick up unidentified targets while conducting routine training missions. The tracks were initially dismissed as false positives, but their behavior was unlike anything they had seen before. Gravity-defying maneuvers, hypersonic velocities, and other mystifying shenanigans. Attempts to intercept these UFOs were initially unsuccessful. Lieutenant Danny Acoin claims that on 2 separate occasions he tried, but failed to make visual contact. Then, one day, a squadron is said to have narrowly avoided a mid-air collision with one of these UFOs. The 2 jets had been flying in tandem, no more than a few tenths of meters apart, when something flew right in between them. That something was oddly described as a cube encased by a translucent sphere. Lieutenant Ryan Graves, who spoke to one of the pilots once they had landed, claims the experience had visibly spooked them. So much so, the squadron filed an official safety report. According to Graves, this was far from an isolated incident. These UFOs were allegedly seen by dozens of pilots for several months and could remain airborne for up to 12 hours at a time. Yet, despite growing concerns among the Roosevelt crew, training missions continued as if nothing was amiss. By early 2015, the Roosevelt strike group had made its way down to the coast of Florida, which is when the 2 now famous videos were recorded, both of which are said to be short clips taken from much longer and higher resolution footage. We don't know much about the circumstances as the officers involved have chosen to remain silent, but let's take a look at the first one.
Dude, this is a drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots to the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not LNS though, is it? It's not. That is LNS, dude. Well, if there's like that thing, it's rotating.
So, there are a few things to unpack in this one. If we ignore the audio for a moment and focus solely on the visuals, the thing that immediately stands out is the apparent rotation of the UFO. I use the word apparent because some debunkers claim that this rotation is an optical illusion. You see, the Atflare pod is equipped with something known as a derotation mechanism. It's meant to counteract the rotation of the camera so that the orientation of the image stays the same, also known as image stabilization. What may not be stabilized, however, are certain artifacts produced by the lens of the camera. You can even try this yourself. Aim a camera towards a light source, rotate the camera, stabilize the footage, and there you go. The orientation of the image is preserved while these spokes of light rotate along with the camera. So much like how the light from this light bulb is producing a lens flare, the infrared radiation from this UFO is said to be producing a lens glare. In other words, debunkers claim it is the camera and thereby the glare which is rotating, not the UFO itself. While this explanation seems perfectly reasonable to my untrained eyes, things get a bit more confusing once we bring back the audio.
Well, if there's another thing, it's rotating.
If this rotation is merely the result of image stabilization, why would the two pilots fail to recognize it as such? Surely they, if anyone, would know what that looks like. And they're not alone. Both Lieutenant Graves and Acoin believe it is the UFO which is rotating. Furthermore, an expert on the Atflare system has very plainly stated that this is not an optical illusion. But this is not the only puzzling comment made by the two pilots.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
So the radar is supposedly detecting a whole fleet of UFOs, which are all traveling crosswind. I mean, if what we're looking at is something prosaic, like the blooming exhaust of a jet engine, these comments don't make a whole lot of sense. I would love to hear what these two pilots have to say if they ever decide to come forward. Until then, all we can do is speculate.
Nickel 6-1 Tango. Roger, Roger, there's troubleshooting. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly!
This video may seem very striking at first, but it is
I just have to stop and say that it delights me to listen to pilots who are used to flying, who are, they go fast themselves. It's, people that have an excitement for what they do, you know what I mean? And to listen to them being like, woo, look at that thing go, you know what I mean? Like, there's an obvious excitement at seeing something perform like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just kind of
this was probably the most extraordinary thing that's ever happened to them, and during their careers, they probably never imagined seeing something like that.
Yeah, you can hear their obvious, excitement and enthusiasm for witnessing something like that. That's not usual, the way it's moving. Look at it go, they're very excited.
Which to me only
cool.
adds additional credit to the testimony, because it's hard to fake that excitement and that enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And it's even harder to believe that they would get that excited over something that would have been mundane. Like, they caught a bird or a plane flying at a lower altitude or something.
Yeah, they were plainly delighted at this encounter.
arguably the least interesting of the three. Once again, let's ignore the audio for a moment and focus solely on the visuals. Unlike the previous two, the UFO in this one is colder than its surroundings, so the ocean below is radiating more heat than whatever this is. It may look as though the UFO is traveling at high speed, but this is likely the result of parallax. In short, aircraft go fast, camera fixed on not so fast UFO appear to go fast. Some say the UFO is near sea level and therefore the parallax explanation doesn't work, but we can actually derive its altitude using the numbers on screen and find that that is not true. Everything seen in this video is consistent with a balloon or some sort of debris floating in the wind. The commentary by the pilots, however, does once again introduce a bit of confusion. I mean, it seems odd for the pilots to be so excited over something so mundane, but without hearing from the pilots themselves, we can do nothing but speculate. The person responsible for making these videos available to the public is a man named Lou Elizondo. Beginning in 2008, Elizondo was the head of a secret government-funded effort to investigate UFO sightings known as the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. By late 2017, however, Elizondo had grown so disillusioned with the government's lack of interest in the program's efforts that he decided to resign. In his resignation letter, Elizondo writes that certain individuals within the government are staunchly opposed to UFO research, that inflexible mindsets and political contention essentially prevented him from doing his job. He portrays the government as virtually unconcerned about an issue which he believes could pose a threat to national security, so much so that he felt it necessary to resign in protest. This seemingly uncaring attitude was also noted by witnesses of both the Nimitz and Roosevelt encounters. For instance, Lieutenant Ryan Graves recalled that the commander of the Roosevelt strike group seemed completely unfazed by this video. On the day when it was captured, he supposedly looked at it for 5 seconds, then walked away without saying a word. Some of the senior officers on board the Nimitz and Princeton are said to have had an equally muted response. These are very bizarre reactions to potential airspace incursions. You'd think they'd want to make sure these UFOs are not some kind of threat.
Do you think it's possible that on higher levels or whatever, our governments already know about this stuff?
I think it's very that they, at the very least, are already aware of the existence of this kind of stuff and its general activities, and there may very well be kind of standing instructions to certain officers in command of ships like this that are known to probably likely encounter it to be like, hey, don't overreact to these kind of encounters.
That's what I mean, is I'm kind of like speculate. I mean, it's speculation, right? The whole thing is, but like on certain levels, do you think that they've made contact and know there's no threat and they're just leave it alone, ignore it if it happens, it's not a thing?
It's possible. My personal take is that they have enough information and possibly do have their hands on actual physical craft, if you want to call them that. Enough to know that they don't know, and enough to feel like they should give out instructions to high-level, like, ship captains or other officers to be like, yeah, with these incidences, bring the information to us, let us know so we can send our people in to grab the radar data and then erase it from the ship or whatever, but don't overreact, don't spread this, don't give your crew the impression this is something to get excited about. We want this kept quiet.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's interesting.
The near mid-air collision reported by one of the squadrons from the Roosevelt seems especially concerning. Regardless of how inaccurate it may be, the term UFO has for many become synonymous with aliens and spaceships. So much so, the government now favors the term UAP, specifically to avoid this unwanted association. Whether sightings go unreported or uninvestigated, the argument is that people choose to look the other way because they're concerned about their reputation. No one wants to be seen as a nutcase and potentially lose out on a promotion. Others believe there could be something a bit more conniving at play, that no serious action is taken because a highly advanced and top-secret drone program is responsible for the sightings. Even some of the witnesses have entertained that possibility. For instance, Sean Cahill, who was the chief master at arms on board the Princeton, perceived the inaction of senior staff as a clear sign that the UFOs were known military assets. But as previously mentioned, it is difficult to believe such radical innovation could have taken place in absolute secrecy. We're talking about such advanced technology it would barely make sense in a science fiction novel. Vehicles that can exceed the speed of sound without producing any sonic booms. Vehicles that can drop or climb to virtually any altitude in a matter of seconds. Vehicles that can violently change direction of travel as if inertia was a mere suggestion. None of that should be possible, yet dozens of trained observers claim they witnessed the impossible. Personally, I'm left feeling very conflicted. On the one hand, I find the witness accounts quite compelling. On the other, I find this grainy trilogy of dots in the sky somewhat underwhelming. Sure, the videos are fascinating, but they're also far too ambiguous to provide any decisive answers. I highly recommend that you seek out and listen to some of the witness accounts so that you can judge for yourself. According to Elizondo, the Nimitz and Roosevelt encounters are just the tip of the iceberg. Sightings by military personnel are said to be commonplace, it's just that we rarely hear about them. I can only hope that more evidence is released in the near future, and that at least one video depicts something inexplicable. Something that is unidentified because it defies explanation, not because it's too distant, too small, or otherwise too obscure. No, but something truly extraordinary. That's what I want to see.
Yes, we will link this video in the description. Go check it out. Click like. Support the original creators. They appreciate it, and so do we.
So, thoughts on those encounters?
I'm not a skeptical person.
Yeah.
Like, not because I'm not, like, initially skeptical, just because I've experienced so much myself that at this point I'm like, nah, something's obviously going on.
Right.
And based on my experience, like, okay, what does consciousness look like?
I mean, we have no real way of mapping it out. I mean, if you were to just flat out point a gun to my head and say, give me an idea of what consciousness looks like, my first impulse would be to, like, draw out the neural pathways of the brain or something like that.
Right, but right. A lot of people assume that your
consciousness comes from here.
Is created in the brain, right? But if you're dealing with I'm not even sure species is the right word, but if you're dealing with a consciousness construct that's from a non-physical space
that has no connection to biology whatsoever,
right? What does that look like?
It look like whatever it wants, a random geometric shape,
right?
And what are we looking at? Random geometric
That's what I'm
shapes.
saying. And even if it did have a want to look like something, again, if it's coming from a non-physical space, it may not even be aware that it needs to look like something, or you're just, what you're seeing or what you're getting is whatever our physics, our system has kind of interpreted around it, and the reflection of that, what you're seeing or what they're picking up, you know what I mean? It's an odd box, or it's a weird tic-tac, you know what I mean? It's
our senses and the equipment we've designed to help us expand our senses don't know fully how to interpret the presence of whatever it is that's there.
Yeah.
A lot of people who even believe in aliens and UFOs are trying to build a thought process around the idea that it is a technological craft of buttons and thrusters and just advanced technologies. There's a device that's creating a gravity bubble or some shit, but it might not even be anything that physical.
Yeah. And honestly, in my gut and my feeling on it says, if something is defying physics in our system, it's because it's not, whatever it is doesn't, the physics of the system don't apply to whatever it is you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
It's a non-physical consciousness construct, and it may look like a tic-tac, or it may look like a box, or because of the way we are in physical reality, it's almost like we have to make pictures out of things in order to understand what's happening.
Well, I mean, our most important sense is arguably our sight, so shape is very important for our ability to identify what something is, what function it serves.
Right.
Yeah, and fear is a very innate instinct in us, so we identify threats first based off its shape or color or behavior. If it's moving in a threatening way, if it has a threatening shape. Now, to me, these things don't have a threatening shape at all, and their behavior isn't particularly threatening either.
No, they're almost just flitting around, and I love that cube or whatever it is, it shot right past in between those two things like it was nothing, because to its senses or whatever, it was easy enough. There was plenty of space to fit between. There was nothing, no threat or anything there, but it sure scared the pilots. You know what I mean? Like,
they almost seem a little playful.
Yeah. And they don't understand, I think, that they're defying physics and freaking people out until they come in contact with the energy, right? So it's, my impression of this is consciousness pushing through into a physical system. It's become aware that we're here and is curious about a system of physics that produce a tangible interaction system that's a completely crazy concept to them. And so in exploring that or pushing through into it, like, they may not even be aware of the shape or form that they're taking when they push through into the system from another system,
Do you think there's different groups of them? Like, they're not all one homogenous thing? There's, like, different groups that appear at different times? And
I think here's what just from watching, like, UFO reportings and different encounters and things, I think yes, like not everything we're interacting with is the same thing. It's like it's not just that we're not alone, like we're in a crowd and we don't realize it. But I think it's also possible, and I've mentioned this before to you, I can't remember if I've ever said it on the channel before, but I think it's also possible that because we also here we have a very linear concept of time, right? But in non-physical reality systems, time can be experienced, it doesn't have to be experienced in a linear format. So I think it's possible that, you see early stages and later stages happening all over our timeline, because I don't think the timelines, I think they come in at different points in our timeline in different stages of their exploration. Does that make sense?
And it's possible that might explain the quote-unquote crashes, where maybe some of those events that occurred where one crashes is kind of like a bit of an oopsie accident on their part of art, that they were trying to figure things out. And they're like, oh, wait, there's ground there and there's this gravity thing. How is this pulling me down? Oh, crap, smack.
Yeah, and it could be that's why they manifest largely in water now.
It's a lot safer.
Rather than, yeah. And sometimes it doesn't happen, and sometimes it does. Sometimes it seems far more advanced, like they do know what they're doing interacting with us, and sometimes it looks like Tic Tacs flying around. But I think it's possible that from their perspective, their timeline, they're coming in at different periods in our timeline from their timeline. So I don't think our linear progression of events is applying to the different points at which they've come through, exhibiting different behaviors as they learn and change on their timeline.
So talking about these particular incidents, it's clear that the general feeling here is that these are from a different realm of existence, a different dimension, as it were. But are you also of the belief that there are still also physical aliens out there?
I mean, there may well be. It's entirely possible that there is. It's a big universe with a lot of different systems that, the more that they look, I mean, science looks deeper and deeper into space all the time and keeps looking for that sweet spot, like our Earth, where, like all of the different things are just in the right capacity to produce biological life. And thus far, it's sort of like our Earth is a rarity. It's a rare thing for just all of those components that are required to produce that biological life all happen in the same thing on the same planet. It is in a system that's stable long enough for long periods of time for biological life to evolve and everything. And once again, it's a big universe, so statistically, is it possible that there are other instances of that out there?
I mean, I think they've calculated that it would be thousands of other civilizations out there. It's just we haven't really detected any of them yet, but who knows for what reason.
Right. Statistically, is that likely? Yes. But they're still, like, actually finding any evidence of that, and, the universe is vast on a scale that's difficult for people to even imagine vast, right? Like, so even if there was, it's likely so far away that for them to travel here physically, like, I can't help but feel like we're at a level where our radar would see that coming, or our, you know what I mean? Like, we're tracking what's happening in space. We have, telescopes and satellites out there. Like, I feel like if they were literally traveling to get here in physical spaceships, like, we would know that. Like, it would be picked up on everybody's anti-weapon radar, and
possibly. I mean, who knows what kind of technology could eventually be developed that would, negate that to one degree or another. I mean, heck, I think about in terms of this other space you talk about, a technology that could be developed that would let physical things dip into that non-reality and use that to travel and then pop back out into a different point in space that might be billions, trillions of miles away from where you started, but from your dip in and your rise back out, from your perspective, it was only an hour of traveling.
It's more like instantaneous, and I do it all the time.
Yeah.
But it's not, again, I am changing the frequency of my consciousness to match other systems in order to be able to push through and do that. Right?
Yeah.
I cannot say that I've ever traveled somewhere and then magically manifested a physical form that fits that system there. When I come through, I'm observing as consciousness. So who knows? Maybe I look like a Tic Tac to them.
It's entirely possible.
You know what I mean? I don't know. So to me, the more likely thing is that when they've figured out how to come through and push their way in, but they're not just like me. Like when I end up there, or I end up in another dimension of reality, I'm suddenly presented with a whole system that's not what I'm used to. I'm a little confused and disoriented and checking stuff out, and based on the reactions from the locals, like I don't know what they're witnessing when they observe me.
Yeah, you can't like see from their perspective exactly.
So maybe I look like a Tic Tac or a cube, or maybe blocks of color. Like I don't know what they witness when they see me, and so my instinct, my feeling on it is that we have something more like that going on. It doesn't mean that there isn't life out on other planets and that it's not possible. I mean, maybe they've figured out some sort of, time travel or worm technology.
I just like to speculate about the future because I find the whole concept of this other reality interesting, and I'm just wondering if at some point we might find a way to interact with it, not just with our consciousness, but with our technology.
I suppose anything is possible. I was reading there was a study that was they've been developing ways to like hook up electrodes to the brain and be able to take the patterns that are happening in the brain and show on a screen like
what's going on,
what images are there. And at this point it's kind of just like dark shadows and shapes and forms. It's not really producing a picture quality into, I mean, they were working on it medically to work with like coma patients. Like, is there something happening? Like, what are coma patients seeing or experiencing? But I think it could easily be used to record dreams, like take dreams and see what's happening. Which would be wild
if you could start recording dreams.
More importantly, if the technology got good enough, you may be able to use it with someone like me as kind of like use consciousness as sort of a camcorder.
Finally we could put a GoPro on the diver exploring the ocean, as it were.
Correct. You could put a GoPro on someone who's an astral traveler like me to see what's going in. Yeah. So I think that there are developments in our technology that's working with, you know what I mean, certain stuff that has potential for the future, I think.
Yeah, but at this point we're still kind of playing with wood, trying to figure out how to make fire, as it were, you know.
Correct. You can't move into another system, another dimension, without first understanding and being able to match the laws of that system, the physics of that system. You wind up with a block, like you just can't get there.
In terms of that kind of realm of experience, we're still banging rocks together a little bit.
Yeah, all energy that passes into a system must assume the form of the system in one way or another. It must figure out how to match frequencies with the system that it's in.
Yeah.
And so you're getting like images of little Tic Tacs because the energy is there, but as far as anything physical that would interact, it's not interacting physically with our environment in a way that matches with our experience. So it's not there for very long, and it's not actually doing much of anything, and it's, you know what I mean? I feel like this is representative of early stages of that sort of exploration from another kind of consciousness, is what it feels like to me watching it. So
makes sense to me.
Anyway, that's what I got. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I'm crazy or if you think we're onto something. Like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. Yeah. And we'll see you next time.
Have a good day, folks.
Bye.